Presently, we're only 2 tracks into Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations, the second to latest work from SIRENIA, and I still might be admittedly young in my days of entertaining their capabilities as artists for myself, but yet I've had a great time, and I would imagine my devotion is building probably to the same level as many of you who are knowledgeable on SIRENIA's gifts, and maybe some of you don't know that name. I cover a broad range of artists on this channel in my effort to bring music into a grander focus, because music for me very much is the first passion, and I love making these types of videos where we initiate with tracks together for the first time, and in some cases artists as well, and SIRENIA fit the bill of that. Though I had a doorway, as I've said before, of familiarity going in, I'm laying a foundation in case maybe you're new to my work with SIRENIA. I was very familiarized to Morten Wieland's talents through his solo project Mortemia, what I've been initiating with for at least several months now. But SIRENIA has really impressed me. I figured they would anyway, because I'm a big European metal guy, and I've been a metalhead for many years. And symphonic metal is a particular subset of the metal scene that I find quite favorable. I'm a big orchestral guy, so the atmosphere to SIRENIA's works has enchanted me. 5 tracks in, and I felt that all of them have demonstrated a high level of talent, quite frankly. I'm very impressed with everything I've heard on part of everybody, including all the aggressive riffs to their music. Again, like I said, the wider atmosphere, especially in the background, and the operatic integration, the choir. I mean, the operatic, specifically in focus of Emmanuelle Sultan's vocal, she's exquisite. And operatic metal has been a growing thing for me for the past couple, years or so. And I've been very impressed with everybody I've heard in that particular realm of music. But like I said, Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations has had a great setup thus far, and I find it quite interesting. Again, I only listened to a selection of tracks with you off of Arcane Astral Aeons, the album previous to Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations. And I had a good perspective, I thought, laid for me in what SIRENIA has as an established sound. And yet I found Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations to be a very interesting transformation, and in some ways a bit experimental from my familiarity. I would imagine their bass line in part. Let's say, for example, Addiction No. 1 really toyed with me in my expectations, specifically in it being like a throwback piece, as I mentioned in that video. And the last one we looked at, We Come to Ruins, exquisite. That was more along the lines of Arcane Astral Aeons, but I still find something so inventive with that piece, especially on the riff emphasis. That song is just such a killer opener. Still does. Every time I've listened to it, it's a strong repeat listen. Anyway, we're making our way through Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations on total of about 4 tracks, and as I said, I'm only 2 tracks in, and we're going to initiate now with This Curse of Mine. I decided, as I do most of the music I consult, to go by the visualizers in order to maintain an even selection, and that's partly to be democratic. There are occasions where I've, covered artists in full in terms of an album release. It's not often, but I try to give a good selection so that I can be fair to all the artists I initiate time with. And with SIRENIA, we're going to be looking at 8 engagements with the group, and of course many more to come, I'm sure. But we're going to continue on initiation with Riddles, Ruins, Revelations with This Curse of Mine, which I like that name, and I kind of preview the lyrics in skimming. And it sounds like a pretty well-constructed song. I'm interested to hear a tune accompanied to the piece. Maybe for some of you, like I said, this is going to be an initial consultation with their craft. I think you're going to quite like them. I say it on faith. Again, I've only covered about 5 songs of theirs, but I've got a good impression built on what to expect, especially on a rougher side. SIRENIA are absolutely impressive, so I think you're going to be thrilled. If you're somebody into metal, or more specifically symphonic metal, you're going to really like them. And of course, for those of you who are established listeners, I know I'm covering this a bit late, apologies, but there's so many groups I initiate with, and perhaps behind the release date of when I would have ideally covered them, at least if I'd known about them sooner. But better late than never, at least in my book. It's a familiar adage to everything I do. Alright, here we go. Again, great setup so far in the album. Is this going to go down the more traditional or experimental route? Okay. I'm getting the sense of the timing now. That's a good disorientation, at least in the beginning. Oh, the pattern of the riff in some part messes with your senses a bit. I walk through our time with my head held high. Ah, I hurt. The lower pitch is, and the slide on that was just exquisite. Again, I'm more so used to the operatic background. is a good song. The message is pretty powerful and I think resonant. That hold. Perfect. That pattern's exquisite. And the structuring as well with the transitional verses into the chorus sections is just phenomenal. Every time I have failed, I never prevailed. Each and every battle was lost. I fell in the darkness, was mazed, I was blind. Never found the path of my choice. When life takes me on, I'll barely hang on. I like that growth too. Good pause. Revert up the energy. Okay, where are we going? Well, it's the same rhythm. It just sounds like, again, the way they've structured the patterns here, it messes with your senses, so you kind of think it's in a different timing for a second. It's just a different syncopation. But it maintains focus. Or it can if it's something you're really in tune with. Okay, interesting place for a slowdown. And again, same beat, but it's more like... I really think this pattern is exquisite. Again, it has so many tones with this piece. And once you take it again for that hard symphonic number, but then, at least in that reduced section, it kind of comes across as like a marching band number with a pattern of the notes. I find it quite an inventive song. That's a good piece, especially for someone who's in the midst of an addiction. I find that quite a cathartic song. I mean, there's many types of pieces that go along that route and might be just as expressive as this piece is. It's really strong, though. I mean, the writing is pretty blunt, and I appreciate that, especially for a song that has that self-healing, self-catharsis type perspective. It's pretty broad as well. I don't think they narrow it. Not really. No, it could be any addiction you could be speaking to. It fits perfectly into the way the lyrics are framed. It has that intentional broadening. The piece, at least let me think in judgment of what I've heard thus far, because I was saying, again, is this going to go down more traditionalist SIRENIA, or at least in evidence in this album, like with the pattern of Addiction number 1, have a bit of a different flair. I like the combination of rhythm tones, especially in the feel they give the song, and when you're trying to follow along with the beat of it and you're kind of just rocking along, you get this idea for, okay, this is the energy, this is the image in your head of what they're going for, right? You make an analogy perhaps, like I was saying with the softer section, the emphasis, though the rhythm is maintained, it doesn't change in any way, it's still the same timing, there's no disruption on that front. It's much more reduced in the emphasis of the percussion that you feel like, and the pattern of the notes, it almost comes across like a marching band number in the background, or not marching band, like marching energy, mixed with a softer pacing and vocality from Emmanuel. But then the rest of the song, it's kind of like, like a power rock song. That's kind of what comes across. I mean, very strong riffs, too, on part of Nils. He's very impressive to me. And I've recently been engaged into him, not just in reference to SIRENIA, but the COVID Aftermath sessions. I thought his riff structure there was pretty good, too. So again, I love being able to go down the European route and learn all these different talents and go into a space that yes, others have crossed. I'm not the first, but I like venturing out quite a bit. It's nice to experiment around and see what talent is there in the world from an international perspective, and SIRENIA is quite capable. I mean, again, like I said, a deeply resonant song with a strong rock emphasis, and, many people I'm sure in the rock scene have dealt with, like I said, there's been plenty of songs from varied artists that have addressed the topic of addiction and what that does in somebody's life. Again, from a broad perspective, fill in the blanks on whatever context or specifics you want to, insert there, and what would best apply, perhaps maybe a personal situation to you, or maybe someone you know. And the rock emphasis, I think, especially in the metal scene, gives it this nice jive that makes it an easy entrance, right? Especially for somebody that, again, gravitates to the harsher. There's a bit of a mixed extreme, in regard to preferences in the metal scene. Some people prefer, softer. Other people prefer much more headbangy, thrash type stuff. This isn't the hardest, admittedly, that SIRENIA has gone in one of their works. It's sort of like in a good middle space, I think, inching toward the rock side a little more. But it's dramatically reduced. I mean, there's not even any backing vocals other than on the choir, and I think some other overlaps from Emmanuel, but like Morton's voice, for example. There's no potent growl. The guy's impressive. It is much more quiet in comparison. But it gives it, again, I think, a nice approach for anybody who might be in the song's vision, right, a theme and message. It's a touching work. And I find it as capable as I would say, even though, in my honest opinion, it's still that opener on the last track, Become to Ruin, has really embraced me. So far, that's my favorite track on the album of what I've consulted. And I'll be looking at Voyage in a minute. That's the next work from them I'll be engaging with. But it's a good addition to the lineup. Again, like I was saying, I think this kind of floats into traditional feel with some experimentation on sound and sense when you go through. Because again, like I was saying, there's a disorientation if you try to track along with the beat. And you might recognize this in other pieces too, where it's like you get that idea in your head of this is what the artists are imagining and pacing, and you maybe correlate it to some sort of internal image or familiarity to yourself, but to give it meaning and relevancy beyond just being an abstract recognition. I sense a bit of a mixture, and I thought it was manifested quite well, in my opinion. Again, I like that natural disorientation where I get set in this pattern of, okay, this is the beat we're following, right? And then the song does a total 180. Maybe not on timing specifically, and maybe it's not that much of a disruption, but it's enough to kind of disorient you and go, I got to pay more attention. Again, I love being able to dive deep with music, especially on my listens. It keeps you fixated, right? It's not like you get distracted. You have to sit and relish every moment with the art and take that experience in. Again, I love music. It's such a... and I cover, as I've said, a wide variety of artistic ventures, perhaps for those of you who are not familiarized to my work. I look at a lot of stuff in the entertainment space, but music is by far and away my favorite. I do find it to be the most creative art form out there, especially by comparison to other arts industries, like, for example, cinema or television that might be getting a bit more streamlined and less independent. Not always, of course, not to be disrespectful and overshadow work that doesn't fit that billing, but I do find music to be a little more liberated and advantageous to my pursuits. And it's a wonderful experience to be able to share my journeys with you, like I have for SIRENIA. In every round I've consulted, not just my own personal listens thus far, but, and everything I've covered on the channel. This is everything I've listened to, and I'll be making my way, as I've said, for the other works, maybe past stuff I didn't cover in previous to the debut of Arcane Astral Aeons. But right now, all my experiences are with you in the moment, and I'm having a great time engaging with their works. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below. If you're a longtime SIRENIA fan, perhaps longer than myself, or if you're somebody that's taking a first approach to their works, whatever angle you come from, I'd love to hear about it down below, if you wish to disclose that, of course. I find Riddles, Ruins, Revelations thus far quite good. It's a duration and a selection of pieces and what we're listening to, and there is a familiar vibe to, again, my set expectations for their works based on consultation of Arcane Astral Aeons and what we've heard of it. Next, as I said, Voyage, and I'll sum up Riddles, Ruins, and Revelations before we get to the presently unveiled 1977. We've only got one track thus far for that, and I'm kind of excited to hear it. All right, but Voyage, that's next. This Curse of Mine, well, I still feel that, for me, the last track, Become to Ruins, is the most potent. This is a good addition. I like it. Good rhythm, good pattern, as I said, of a song, and great message. Very touching. Deeply resonant, I would imagine, for many listeners, whether you're a longtime SIRENIA fan or not. It's a universal theme that I think is well documented here and well spoken of. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.